Let's get into it, Dan. When you joined Tausch and I on this show last year around this same time, you dropped a nugget that you had been talking to the Packers about potentially a role that could have been on the coaching staff. Do you think you would have had the offense humming at the level they were in November, December, January, as well as it turned out to be at the end of last season?
No, I think you obviously have to tip your hat to the job that LaFleur and staff have done really with two different quarterbacks. And, I think the really impressive thing was, getting Jordan to play at the level that he played at and really fixing some of the stuff in games that really needed to get handled when it comes to his feet and the mechanics of his feet in a way that gets you to play at the highest level when it comes to your talent demanding that. And so, and really the development of the young perimeter players as well. So, those guys have proven to be really high-end coaches and developers, and I think that's probably one of the most encouraging things for the future in Green Bay.
Dan, what did you notice? Because we all watch your breakdowns, and it was the footwork, but that's not easy to do. You do that stuff at quarterback school in the offseason. You're trying to game plan and everything else. How did it transition so well? Was it just the development of the wideouts, or what did you notice from about week 8 on? Because I think I heard you this morning say Jordan Love has played as well as any quarterback in the league the last half of the season. What were the big things that he improved on?
Yeah, so Jordan specifically was his mechanics and staying more connected to the ground. And so what happens when Jordan was coming out of school, you saw this remarkable raw talent, but the raw talent never develops unless you give it a foundation. And what I mean by that is you get so mechanically sound because there has to be a mechanical and fundamental element of sports in any position, no matter how talented a guy is. I've talked about this with Patrick and Josh Allen, Lamar. So Jordan's talented, but flawed. And so the best part was the Packers gave him the opportunity to work out that flaw. And he's not working out a flaw that developed over 6 months. He's working out a flaw that developed over a decade, essentially playing the position. So you give him the time sitting behind Aaron to do that. And then you continue to make it a focal point. And then over that period of time, you think you get it figured out and fixed. And then all of a sudden, bang, you're in real life games. And you're trying to run for your life and make decisions and win football games, and you start to revert back to bad habits. And his bad habit or his flaw was he would stand too straight up in an unathletic position, and he would bounce instead of kind of like graze the ground and keep his feet almost at the top of the grass, because then you're never in position to either move as quickly as necessary or deliver the ball. So you saw the work that went in through the 3 years, and then the work that went through the first half of the season of continuing to strive to better that in game. Okay, so that got better. Not perfect, but that got better. And then the second element was you saw those young receivers develop as well. And really one of the turning points was as those the Packers offense became a really difficult offense to match up against if you wanted to play, let's say, man coverage. You had to have 4 or 5 pretty darn good cover people, because when Watson was healthy, you had to play, a guy that could play him in man-to-man, and then a guy that could play Dobbs physically enough in man-to-man, and then a guy inside with Jaden and Wicks, and then the tight ends. And so you had to have people to match up, and then teams realized, the quarterback's starting to play at a high level, and we don't really necessarily match up, so they started to see a lot more zone. And when this offense is humming and you got a quarterback and a coach kind of seeing it the way this offense versus zone defenses, you could just gut them in the play action game. And so I think those are probably the two biggest reasons why, one directly Jordan and one attached to the people on the outside that got it to take off.
Dan, if you ever do get into coaching, the Packers have done it the right way. Aaron sat. Would you sit guys, like if you were the Bears, you're going to have a ton of pressure to play Caleb early. There's a huge benefit to sitting. How would you balance that? Is it just going to be, how would you do it?
Yeah, I have become such a big believer on the sitting 9 out of 10 times. I often say it's very individualized, and the biggest thing you have to figure out is the young man mentally tough enough to fall on his face every single Sunday, because it's just the reality. And does that negatively impact his long-term development, be both on the field and the ability to go be as good as he possibly can as that leader? But I've become a bigger believer in the sitting. One, because it's kind of similar to what I just talked about with Jordan. When you take these guys that are flawed, because they all are coming out of school, and you put them on the field, their number one job and goal as a player is to compete and win. And that's hard to do anything and everything it takes to win and to develop is almost impossible to happen at the same time. Number two is, what are the expectations of our team and our organization and owner? That has to factor in as well. Do you believe that we are a 3-year development team, or do you want me to win right now? And sometimes that's an unrealistic viewpoint in the NFL. And then the third element is, are we good enough around this young man to not just destroy him both physically and mentally? And I think the third one is probably the one that teams skip over and look past far too often.
So when you do rankings, and that's what everybody does in the content business, is there anybody that you would take in the NFC if you're looking at long term over Jordan Love right now?
Oh, long term. Okay.
Yep.
At that position, long term. So the guys that immediately come into my mind conversation, Brock Purdy.
Yep.
I think Brock is a very high end player, and he's obviously in a great place. Jared Goff, I have always been a believer in. When you protect him, he could throw it as good as anybody. I don't know if that's viewed as a long term. I do like that Atlanta signs Penix, but I don't think so. I mean, big fan of Caleb's as well. So right now, I don't think that there's a quarterback in the NFC that I would definitively take over Jordan Love when it comes to the future, let's call it 6 to 8 year window. No, I think Jordan would be the guy. Brock would be in that conversation for me.
Yeah, so you would have no problem because obviously here in Wisconsin and Packer fans, the money that quarterbacks are getting, you see Lawrence, and it's only continuing to go up. You don't have any issues paying him top market, even though he's only played one season.
No, I don't have any issue with it because of the one thing, development. I've seen him develop, and I said that, people take a lot of the things that I say and, we twist them into whatnot. The comparison for me would be this, okay? I've watched Jordan Love develop from what he was in college throughout the couple moments in his early career and then a season, and then I've seen him develop within the season. The contrast for me would be, as much as I love a player in his talent like a Kyler Murray, I haven't seen Kyler develop at a different level just yet. As much as I love and the player and the talent of a Trevor Lawrence, I haven't seen that development to a different level. And so that's why I've had a little bit of hesitation in both those situations, where Jordan, albeit one season, I've seen the development from college, and then I've seen that in-season development. So, no, I would be comfortable in that.
How much of that do you put on coaching? Because you're obviously a big fan of Matt LaFleur. We've heard you break it down, Kyle Shanahan. Matt LaFleur had his best season, I would say, last year, being able to weather that storm in the beginning and then come out being one of the best teams.
Yeah, a huge onus on it. I mean, really, for a quarterback to play at a high level in the NFL, there's a couple things that are needed. Number one, you have to have elite, rare physical talent. Jordan has that. Number two, you have to have the mental capacity to constantly be a high-end problem solver. I think Jordan is starting to show signs of that. And then number three, you have to have a high-end offensive scheme married with one of the better elite play callers in the NFL. That's how it happens, for the proper support system. And I think that third one, with the scheme and the play caller, you watch this offense evolve over the season. So directly you saw that individual growth from Jordan, but also the pieces and what the pieces are good at, what they're not good at. How do we continue to get the best out of everybody and put those guys in the best situations to play at that high level? That's really where that coaching goes to a different level, and certainly LaFleur and the fellows did that.
Dan Orlovsky, before we let you go to First Take, where do you put the Packers with your national perspective in the grand scheme of the NFC entering this season?
Yeah, I think there are a few knowns in the NFC. I know the 49ers would be really good. I know the Detroit Lions would be really good. And I know the Los Angeles Rams would be really good. I think the Packers are in that next tier of, all right, like I'm super intrigued. I think this offense, how good is Halfley? Can he be Green Bay's Jim Schwartz to Cleveland? So they're not a known for me, but they are right in that next tier of teams that I think very highly of.
All right, Dan, we appreciate your time. What did you think with J.J. Redick, who's doing kind of what you're doing, ends up as the head coach of the Lakers? Is Dan Orlovsky going to be a head football coach in the NFL at some point?
I hope one day. You know, that's always been something that's been on my mind. I certainly hope to do it one day. You know, I love the camaraderie element of the sport. I love the development element of the sport. I love the locker room. It's always been one of my favorite places on the planet. I love the intellectual aspect of football and the leadership aspect of football. So I hope to one day, as old as I feel sometimes, I'm only 40, so I know JJ's only 40 as well. So I'm a huge fan of JJ's. I'm mad that he took the job because him and I were supposed to play golf. Yesterday in the Hamptons,
we saw you. Ryan Clark was kind of getting after you. Maybe coaching over golf, because it seems like your golf game, at least a lot of criticism from your golf game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of criticism with many of the things I do, and a lot of it is warranted.
Food
Golf
takes.
certainly in that conversation.